Chapter 21 of Magic and Technology. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Arthur C. Clarke. I don't like Arthur C. Clarke. It's a good quote, it's known. They'd walked nearly a mile into the tunnels with no sign of real change. Sometimes the tunnels would be square, other shapes included cylinders and triangular configurations. These were most distressing, as the walls that should not be touched came in above the head. They would duck until an intersection revealed the same straight line in a new shape. At one point, they were essentially lost, but Carl had become extremely calm. For one thing, he knew it was a finite distance across the basin, and they were headed in the general direction of the Conch Ziggurat. For another, he seemed to like the company. The flies became thicker the further they went, and that sickly sweet stench was everywhere. They didn't see any grays, spiders, or balls of slime. The only sign they had come deeper into the complex of crumbling walls was the ever-increasing glow at the roof. Starting off, the four were silent, but as it became apparent they were alone in the crisscrossing network of linear artificial tunnels, they began to talk. All four stayed in the center of the path, walking single file and keeping maximum distance from the walls. The ground remained a different material entirely, and the roof had the glowing insect-like creatures. So, Carl, Mr. Marlborough, what do I call you anyway? You want me to call you by your Russian name? Clever Ed was a few paces behind Carl. Ricky was behind him. Ethan covered the rear. Carl looked over at Clever Ed sideways. You FBI men do your homework. Wasn't exactly a mystery. Carl is fine. I'm used to it. Kirill is long ago. Fair. So, you would happen to know about any time dilation effects associated with this place, would you? Or a big tree, really big, like the size of a mountain? Yes. 12 hours here is a year. The tree is the tree of knowledge across the humanity sea, a body of water made of all mankind's collective understanding. As I have drunk of its waters when we leave here, I won't be so easy to understand. 12 hours is a year, you say? Roughly, give or take a few days. Immediately, Clever Ed checked his watch. It's been about an hour since we came here. That means a month, said Carl, then smirked in the low light. It is all right, though. You don't have any immediate family that would miss you unless perhaps several years went by. Those attached to you are already rather distant. Ed softly grabbed Carl's shoulder and stopped the whole group. Now, how in blazes do you know that? Even Ricky had to look at him. Yes, how are you knowing this? Hey, Carl, why didn't the Indian guy lose his accent? Ethan added. Carl smiled and looked ahead. The Almighty knows we are here. There is a reason we are here. He does not allow those of us stolen by these demons. That is generally the only way here. You do not come here otherwise, unless conditions are precise. Knowing you would be here a long time, God allowed you. Family is deeply important. In the course of life, we will regularly interact with our family. But there are many people in this world, and many ways families come and go. However long you will be here, your presence is unlikely to cause these important people in your life undue distress. Being gone a month like this, what stress this would cause. You would likely be here even longer, in all likelihood. You do not have a lot of family then. This is my deduction. Certainly there could be other possibilities, but since this is the most likely, I assumed it. As it appears, my assumption was correct. So incidentally, your isolation in the real world has a silver lining. I should also point out that I have observed this trend in those who come and go through this place. As to your question, Ethan, Ricky has not drunk any of the water yet. Ah. Clever Ed blinked and his mustache twitched. You call this a silver lining, he quipped. You know, Katya and Paul were pretty unstuck as well, family-wise. Hadn't even put that together. Ahead, Carl nodded. It is a silver lining because I expect that you will live, Ricky will live, Ethan will live, we will live. And because of our presence here, others will live. What will take with you? What comes with you? But the experience and the learning and the understanding is silver lining. You know who you're talking to, Carl. More than you may suspect. You did not get to my dacha in Siberia because a federal agency sent you there. The best you could have attained is a pretense, like an award ceremony or a diplomatic assignment or a cybersecurity seminar related to Russian hacking techniques, Ricky offered. Yes, that is true, Ed acknowledged. So, Carl continued, you are not going to be the average government type, the Greys of whom you have heard. They are those who pull the strings in Washington. And you intelligence groups are the strings which are pulled. But even so, it is all clandestine. There are always those of any group who are not involved in the chicanery. You hearing this, Ricky? It's like you already heard my bastards and idiots speech. What speech? Ethan asked, and Ricky explained it to him as they trailed along, shooing fat flies from one another. Carl resumed his conversation with Clever Ed. In all of man's history, it is always the most elite of the elite who tend to dip their fingers into infernal power pies. Yeah, FBI is that way, so's the CIA, and certainly the AIC people. So you are FBI. You do missing persons cases. The man who crumbled and became a ball of green. The corpses in the lair of the spider. They are missing persons. The agency responsible, ACHE or AIC, steals them and uses them, and makes sleepers of some, and others it turns into perhaps generals or handlers. The rest become slaves, brains overtaken by a sort of spiritual neural net like a pirated radio station. Of course, AIC is really the arm of these beings. They are in part the spiritual wickedness in high places that Paul spoke of. Not your Paul, the one from the Bible. From what I've been able to figure out over time, they are all in governments across the world, generally sequestered in some benign-sounding, banal intelligence agency. And when I say they are all in governments, I mean all governments. Of course, to keep their main agency secret. They have personnel in all their groups as well. Some slaved, most willing, most enticed. Most who work for these things just want to live the most pleasurable life they can. They want status. So, they make their devil deals. But I haven't seen any women yet, Ed disputed, tongue-in-cheek. Very funny. I will say this, of course not. It turns out demons are truly sexist, as opposed to a political straw man. And so these evil things truly objectify the female. That is where we go to the place where the women are kept, to hopefully at least save the women we love. Well, I love. Ethan back there is still learning. Hey man, I really like Chloe Claire. I'm in it to win it for the right reasons. At any rate, Carl continued without losing momentum, the only women connected with AIC or the rest will be employed on the human side and generally put to work in the peculiar way they are put to work here. It is not convenient for these fallen things to only abduct personnel. They prefer to make their own. Do you understand what I'm saying? Ed's eyes widened. Make their own. Why do you think so many abduction stories are fraught with perversity? The men have samples taken from them. So also the women. But even these beings are not sophisticated enough to design a synthetic womb. Humans might be, but then they leech from us. No, Agent Clever Ed. There is a huge chamber with thousands upon thousands of women, and they are sedated, and they are used for one purpose only. That chamber is the heart of the conch ziggurat. But prior to that chamber is one other in which the women who are not yet able to be impregnated wait, sedated. Those in the larger chamber, I'm afraid the four of us can offer them no hope. In the other place, though, there we can save them. But you, Ed, you cannot be a help if you insist on agnosticism. Listen, you can't just expect a guy to make a big religious choice like that on the spot. Carl nodded. I know, but I'm going to anyway. Maybe it's not God, you know. Maybe this is some alien thing. You ever stop to think? All this dimension stuff? Come on, is this any kind of Earth? We are in a half universe. Have you seen a man making clay pots? Have you seen the unused clay? Have you built something from lumber? What do you do with all the wood that is not used? It could be firewood. It could be something else. You could make a chair. Have you written a long document? Do you keep a notepad of ideas to the side that was not the final document, but was integral in its composition? We are in God's notepad, His scrap pile, His unused clay, you see? We are in the demo before the video game. We are in the mock-up. So not some other planet, Ed replied. Do you know computer games? Oh, I've heard of them. I'm in my 60s. I'm surprised you know anything about the games. From what we know, you ought to be about 20 odd years older than me. The time dilation. That's right. Do you know games? I know Mario. Mario with the pipes and the evil turtle and the mushrooms. Yeah, that's about it. Okay, Agent Clever Ed. Look, just call me Ed, alright? I ain't feeling all that clever the last couple of months, if I'm being honest. Ed, do you think the little mushroom people in the Magic Mario world have grown from infancy to adulthood? Do you think they remember a time when the great turtle had not built castle infrastructure? I don't know. No, they do not. They were not designed yet. They were created at a fixed point in the 1980s. There is no piece of digital dirt in the world of Mario older than 42? It is 2022, right? There's nothing at all, older than 42 years in that universe. The game came out in 1980, whenever it was released. But there are cultures in the game, Ed. There are kingdoms. Can a culture arise in 42 years? Yet it is, in Mario. Why? Because it is a game created by a designer. Do the characters in the painting have a history before the painting? Or those in a novel? Or those in a poem? Or a song? And so it is with our world. It has been made and made to continue making itself. And it has a fixed point of authorship. And there would be no way to look at things as we see them now and determine what it might have been before that fixed point. There is no before when the fixed point includes the inception of time. The best that can be done is extrapolation based on incomplete data. We cannot attain all the variables from within the simulation, QED. But Clever Ed, you know this to be true because you know who in the government are evil and who are not, and you know there is a distinction. You know there is a right and there is a wrong. This means you know there is truth. For there to be truth requires axioms be designed into this universe. Axioms that transcend time and space cannot come except through deliberate design. You do not get axiomatic design in creation where there has been no creation. Yet there are absolutes in the world, in our world. There are axioms. There are archetypes. Their existence is all the more evident in this upside-down place where some have been subtracted. Ed had a concerned look. But what if it's all a dream? You and I didn't even exist before some mad artist decided to throw us together like this. He could do anything. We can do nothing. We are certainly here. And we have memories. And we can do things. And we do get things done. Or you and your partner wouldn't be here. So, you have been made, you have destiny. This is part of it. God has brought you here. The rest is up to you. Ask Christ. Ask the programmer of the simulation we call existence. He knows your thoughts. He is outside time and space, just as the Mario designers are. He can look at every one and zero and bit in the universal painting. He can spend all of his attention on each individual, each person, throughout the total arc of their existence, and then turn to the next and do the same. This is the implications of the writings of the Hebrews called the Bible. This is the reality. It is He who brought you to the FBI, who showed you the corruption, who led you to that other 411 missing scenario, the one like this, and then to the present situation in this world. Precept on precept, line on line, domino after domino. Well, yeah, but Ricky's really who got me involved in this particular situation. Yes, sir, but it was totally by accident, sir. I accidentally clicked the wrong image on the internet, Ricky corrected. You didn't tell me that. Well, it never came up. So you see, Carl resumed, you are here for a reason. And we are here for a reason. And even though I have absolutely no idea what you are going to do next, or what I am going to do next, or what we are going to do next, I am certain there is a point. I had intended to cause a distraction. Shift in with the cat, grab my lady and leave. God told me to get a lodger. I did not know the ocean would rise and the tree would grow and everything would change. God did. Well, I got a lodger. Now I have all three of you to help, even if my schedule has been altered. And we have to help, because what else can we do? Ed acknowledged. Here's what I'm saying, Ed and Ricky. I know you're listening. You must ask in Jesus and you must mean it, or you cannot help me. You cannot help those women. And you're going to have a hell of a time getting out of here. You probably will not, but instead end up hooked up to some tube while demons in alien drag giggle at the terrors they inflict. Your best hope would be a hypnotic Manchurian-style head reset. You would not remember any of this, of course, but at some point in the future, they will wind you up like a toy and you will do your mission. If you have ever wondered where human agencies could get such a diabolical idea as mind control, you have the demons to thank. Though, no, it goes back far into the past, way beyond the Hashishans, to the time of Nimrod. You sure know your history, Mr. Carl, sir, said Ricky. Well, to be fair, most of my life I have lived alone with the cat. At this point, a sphere of green shot past in front of them extraordinarily fast, following a perpendicular trajectory down a different corridor. An idea struck Ethan. Carl, you think we ought to follow it this time, maybe? See where that disembodied critter is headed? Carl's eyes widened, yes, and he began to run. Ethan, Clever Ed, and Ricky followed, each man remaining carefully aware of the strange walls. It was a good 10 feet to the intersection, and when they turned down it, they saw the ball of green quite a distance away. They had to run to get anywhere near it. The air was yet thick despite the stench and the flies, and they could hold a faster gait than would perhaps be the case in the true world. But none of them were fast enough, and eventually the dot disappeared to a point and was gone. They slowed to a walk and kept on. Carl said, either these things lead us there, he had to exhale, or we find the nexus point I know the cat is familiar with, and we hope she begins her rounds. I have encountered 20 or 30 near the conch ziggurat, and a few inside. If she makes her rounds, we will see it. It is through this method I know of the chambers where the demons keep the women. 20 or 30 nexus points, Ed observed. Truly there are hundreds of thousands of them across the earth. I've only found several hundred, maybe 1,000. Time and space are aging like an old garment. More will be opening soon, not less. Soon, many things will be coming through them. That is what I think. They continued in silence a moment, and that's when the fear came. For Ethan and Carl, who had the spiritual armor, it was like a thickening smell. For Ed and Ricky, it was a palpable terror that rested in their bowels and spread through them like invisible cancer. I think we might want to stop and reconsider this, Eddie said suddenly. The fear, rebuked Carl. You are feeling the fear. We are closer than ever. The fear is a tool, and it will make your mind break in. It will break your mind if you give in. You must withstand it. Without God, I do not know that you can. Clever Ed grabbed Carl by the shoulder again, this time less softly. Listen, Marlboro man, we're mature. We know things. No need to keep up the act, okay? You're lost, we're lost. It's okay. We can head back and find our way to that canyon again. You are feeling good too. No. We continue. Ethan, get behind me. Ed, Ricky, keep your guns close. Stay at the back. You will be useless without God. Maybe you can do covering fire if the exit point of these caves is elevated. And Carl went on to explain about the peroxide river and what his earlier plans for it were. The light began to change as they continued, and now there was a low hissing sound, increasing illumination, revealing a nasty sort of miasma in the air, as though the putrid light of what was ahead weighed down the very atmosphere. There was an incline to the tunnel now, also, but curvature prevented the true end point from being visible. Carl said, Ethan and I have seen the great demons that are really balls of green piloting flesh shoots. We have all seen the black-eyed Randfields, the Eggmen, the Grinners. We have seen the spiders and flies, cylinders and other shapes that reject gravity. Well, we might be about to see something else. Ethan, you asked me something about Genesis 6 long ago. Yeah. It talks about sons of God making children with women. But the Hebrew term, that's why I gave you multiple translations. The Hebrew term is Nephilim. It means fallen. The term for sons of God is Bnei Elohim. There is a distinction. One group are the angels who rebelled with the devil, who let the computer virus of evil infect them. The other group are the progeny coming from their viral infection. The files the corrupted software produced. The alien looking things, the green goo, that is the AI spun content, the corrupted files, at least in our time. In the golden era, they were another class of being altogether, one that was embodied in giant physical forms. Now the progeny, today, the progeny are puny, but the rebellious angels yet remain. We may be about to encounter one of the fallen angels who rebelled against the devil, who rebelled with the devil himself. Ricky, you believe in Hinduism. Your deities are these fallen angels, and they are not gods, but they are real. They are evil incarnate, and will appear as something wonderful to your eyes. They will be a fantasy, or they will entice you through the fear, or both. They are not what they seem. You've encountered one. Ricky was inclined to take Carl seriously, though he did not want to. Yes, it is like nothing you have seen. Okay, stop. Just stop. Clever Ed finally said. Listen, I don't know. I'm skeptical, okay? Technology, science, this weirdness. I don't know. But you know what? You can't be too careful. Let's have a come to Jesus meeting. How does this work again? Carl didn't get a chance to respond. Something truly unprecedented happened. A great shaking took over everything. And the nanomachine walls began to reconfigure, lifting the ceiling, widening the space, crumbling away, and in seconds all four of them were under a massive sloping roof in a cavern hundreds of feet in height. Above them, far enough to be slightly occluded by subterranean atmosphere, was an upside-down curved shape, half of a sphere, like a chandelier with no jewels. It was in the same violet-tinged metallic color as the entire ziggurat. It was the rounded bit of the inverted conch. They were in a chamber beneath that feathered out from the larger structure, a huge chamber, one that may have been what constituted the slight upward slope at the base of the conch. Pillars as thick as a skyscraper were arrayed at 6 points conforming to the edges of the ziggurat's base. They were metallic and mighty. Carl, Ethan, Ricky, and Clever Ed were occluded in the shadow of one of these elephantine pillars, and behind them the nanomachine corridors could be seen extracting themselves very slowly into what appeared to be flat stone. The flat stone had fissures in it, areas where the spiders may have leaked through. It was weathered, old, and falling apart. So there was some sort of explanation for the mystery of the spiders and the tunnels like Wi-Fi arcs diminishing toward a center. In the center of the chamber floated some sort of light display, but it would appear to be a face. A horrible, malevolent face with a hooked nose, dark eyes, and jowls. Even so, the face was hard to make out amidst nauseating colors. Then the face was nothing. Then it was many faces, and the colors bright, clashing, hard to see. The light began to do things which reconfigured the nanomachine particles. It was using its titanic sand computer, each nearly microscopic grain a server in its own right, combining with its billions of brothers. Now they made a very real cloud, but one which certainly had a computational element similar to cloud computing arrays. In the center of the great space, the particles coagulated into something that looked much as an island does, and even became surrounded by a faux sea. This all became covered in a transparent layer of curved nanoparticles like a dome. The putrid light descended into the simulation, the four-dimensional hologram it had created. It flowed straight through the transparent outer layer of the dome as though it were air. As the kaleidoscopic maelstrom descended, it took on another shape, that of a fair-haired man, but a man who was somehow not a man at the same time. Whatever it was, it embodied all the perfect traits that should define a man in his peak. It wore bright clothing, but the cut was contemporary and had a wealthy look to it. The being walked around, creating things on the island, infrastructure, landscaping. When he was done, the space could have been the space could have been a beach off the coast of Florida, near a community of wealth. From where the four stood, behind the pillar, which itself acted as a sort of boundary to this scene, there was about a foot of water stopped by the dome. and the waves coming from nowhere to flow towards simulated shores. Through the dome, darkness developed until it was evening. Abruptly, a boat appeared through the dark on those waves. A big one. It docked, and from it a little man waddled down the gangplank in the warm Floridian night. Clever Ed squinted. "Hey, that's Steve Gates." "That is Steve Gates," said Ethan. "He's like 400 feet away," Ricky protested. "The man has a shape," Ed countered. Then, "What in the world is going on here?" "Hold on." Carl had a hand to his ear. "Can you hear that?" They all moved quickly up to the front of the pillar. It was itself several hundred feet wide, but coming to the dome, getting right near it, over the sound of the surf, if you leaned in, you could hear through that dome right to the conversation that was going on, almost like you were there on the beach with them. The shapes were small and distant, but they could be seen, figurines on a vast table. Ethan leaned in too far and fell into the transparency of the dome. All four men froze, but nothing happened. The dome was solid. Hadn't that neon light abomination just sunk right through? What was going on here? Carl looked up the curve of the massive nanomachine creation. He could see dark, swirling energies that sometimes had a face and sometimes did not. They were right at the top, like the arc of a beam of electricity from some spherical Tesla device. They were between the dome and the floor, or rather the roof, and the curved non-chandelier of that roof at the top. A unit of electricity between as an arc bearing consciousness. If Carl concentrated, he could tell whatever was in that light display seemed very intent on the events taking place beneath the crystalline dome. Dark faces in rotten color made rotten expressions, becoming coherent enough to be seen for a split second, then becoming madness again. Even so, Carl could tell they were staring straight down through the dome. They were far, and the orientation of the light inside the simulation kept Carl, Ricky, and Ethan, and Clever Ed in shadow. All four natural human beings in that chamber, playing voyeur behind the pillar, knew they should look away. They knew they should find their way to a cylinder, or the holding chamber of those they intended to rescue. Even so, they were captivated. Ricky in particular pulled himself some distance from the group, creeping near the very front of the pillar. The fear was like a wave. It was coming down from the lights atop the dome, coming from within the dome. He could feel it washing over him, ebbing, then becoming intolerably strong, then almost disappearing except for the beat of his heart. Yet despite these sensations, he wanted to see, so he inched his way along the massive pillar, ever closer to the faint light of the faux beach under the dome. It was here that Ricky made a promising discovery. "Nordic Jack! You set me back a little, didn't you?" Steve Gates adjusted his glasses and stood with his legs apart on the beach. He had his trademark sickly smile, the one that looked like he practiced it. Bioluminescent plankton glowed around his naked feet as the waves came into shore. "How so?" "Well, you sucked me up. You sucked up one of my assets before she was womb ready. How about that?" "Was that within the pacts?" The man called Nordic Jack put his hands together in front of his waist and stared, totally free of emotion. He was wearing white shorts and a white shirt that were both a bright white hue, all monochrome. He was also barefoot. Jack's eyes were blue like the sea, his hair exceptionally light. His proportions were perfect, and his tone was entirely even. Half of him was in darkness, the other half faintly illuminated by the island's infrastructure. "Well, no, but damn, man, I went over to Claire's info myself, after I sent you Mitch, and, well, she's still gone, and now I'm missing 3 grinners, and, come on, Jack, they're half yours anyway under the pact." "We did not take them. We have them, yes, but we did not take them." "Well, who did?" "The Pleiadians." "Oh, really?" Steve Gates crossed his arms. We got all that quantum info rolling. We got the ball headed down the hill. GCT's making qubits like they're going out of style. CERN makes leaps and bounds every day. Even sand in the Dakotas is making waves." It's all quite good.
But come on, Jack, you promised me a royal line. You promised that I would live on forever and not just inside some machine. That there would be 1,000 Steve Gateses. That I would make Genghis Khan look like one of those fat, nutless castrato boys that get to sing all the blockbuster music. Now you're taking my girls and the wombs they have. You're taking my grinners. And not to put too fine a point on it, but you're blaming it on the Pleiadians?
And have you not built from what was left by Jeffrey?
Well, yeah, look at this place.
Gates made a vague gesture to the gently glowing lights and the structures they illuminated up the beach.
But we had to rebuild on a totally different atoll on an island I had to buy. By the way, we had to ship in new infrastructure, reorganize, hire people, fire people, make people disappear, and the plebs are watching. What a hassle!
You've done a fine job. We are pleased.
You are pleased. What about me? I accept we're going to see some upheaval. I accept half the world is going to bite the bullet. We got as many dosed with spike proteins as we could. They're going to resonate just like your boys in gray. But what about me and mine? You know, you would have had a lot harder time of it if it wasn't for me. I can go anywhere, work with anybody. I make money like crops in a field. In fact, these days, I own most crops in most fields. What if I just, what if I decided this business relationship isn't working out for me?
You have always had the choice to destroy all humanity in laziness, but you will do so obscure and alone if you should decide to.
So what you're telling me is I'm stuck with you.
Blame the Pleiadians, Nordic Jack countered.
I don't know how you do things in your galaxy, Jack. Here, we have a thing called fiduciary responsibility.
Stop. You stole your comrade's software to initiate the false empire over which you preside today. You passed it off as your own, and he drank himself to death. A fine move, we agree, but not one evidencing deep cunning as you seem to assume. Certainly, you have a blackmail network almost as extensive as our own, and without the metaphysical computation. But you didn't build your organization. You inherited it. We built it before you were born. Before your family got into the business of humanity pruning through elective abortion. We pulled the money strings in the 60s. We took out that non-papal Catholic. You, your government, and many governments are ours. They always have been, and cowardly vermin will always be viable. You are a rat near the top for now, and you can stay there! Solidify your line! Or you may decide not to, and another will take your place. Maybe a pope, maybe a president.
And if I start working with the Pleiadians?
And a smile developed that was exceptionally mirthless, but it was not insincere. It split the being's face. Nordic Jack continued to laugh, and he sat heavily on the sand. The Pleiadians will have you give up all your wealth to join, and tell you nothing. You will need faith. You are a thoroughly faithless man, Stephen, except when it comes to fashion, where you could use less faith in yourself. But you do make yourself look benign in what is clearly a blind spot of your psyche, what with all those pink sweaters. We have no criticisms on that point.
So I'm faithless. So how about you help me then, I don't believe anything but results.
The grins subsided back to neutrality. What do you want? Don't you already have the world?
In principle, yes. Yes, I have the world. In principle. But I have to share it.
Well, you're not getting the womb back. She is ours, and you are interchangeable. There are 1,000 Grinners. We can send them to you. And don't try to enter our domain outside the ritual again. It is only a hassle. It is still a hassle. You've let Pleiadian vermin into our domain. And they continue to cause havoc. Oh, they will be found. Unless they've taken up residence in our headquarters, our extraction vessels will find them.
You're like a brain, aren't you? Like a collective brain.
Yes, Steve. Very good.
But you know, the brain feels no pain. Better hope they're not in your system folder.
They certainly are not. Spiders have them, surely. Look here. And Nordic Jack made a sweeping motion with his arm. A purple illumination defined a point far down the beach. A portal opened, and along a wide black road like a tongue, a broken vessel jostled. The black road came right down the beach until it became sand, and resting on that sand was now a strange-looking thing with one side a curved spiral shape like a domed cinnamon roll that had bits of wood hanging from it, and the other side a smaller opposing curved shape beneath. 4 thick legs spasmed without rhyme or reason, and the thing would shudder. They came in this, one of our underdeveloped mitochondria from the industrial age, before mankind rediscovered flight and gave us more options.
Was that in Russia, Siberia, or out in the hinterlands?
Yes, you know as much. You cannot find your way to our domain, Steve. And if you did, you would be immediately taken and become one of our energy fulcrums until you were so tapped as to be a grinner. You are a workhorse, Stephen. Your kind may see you as a man of substance. Our kind see you as a tool. We will use you until we can't, and then we will find another. Now, take my hand, and I will erase the hangover.
I'll take the damn hangover.
Oh, little Stephen Gates, you are so weak. The adrenochrome will leave you bedridden for the next several days, and we have plans. It is Vaseline on the lens of a camera. It will inhibit other signals your brain picks up. This is no trifling thing.
What's it matter to you? Just a few minutes, anyway.
And now you're pouting. We give you so much more time than you realize, you know. Our conversation takes minutes, but it is in your mind. Minutes for you, seconds for us. You have no idea what energy is needed to convert this temporal exchange in real time. You are being watched even now, though our conversation ended minutes ago for those who watch. The math is incredible. You'd love it if you were any good at that sort of thing. No, just pump the brakes, little Stephen. I will already punish you for this imposition, but you need not be hung over as well.
Imposition? It's been almost a year since you took the cloning womb I came to talk to you about.
Yes, and she is still not ready to impregnate, but she will be soon. For your punishment, we will send one of your propaganda vehicles to a competitor. You will lose many billions, but this will stifle consciousness of our designs in complacency. Your kind can only be pushed so far until the stubbornness takes over.
Which propaganda vehicle?
The little bird, Chirper.
You wouldn't! That's the app that helps you the most!
Yes, Stephen, and it will help us even more as controlled opposition now. Take my hands to lose the hangover. And Steve Gates complied with Nordic Jack. In an instant, the sand disappeared, the beach disappeared, and Steve Gates disappeared, waking up in his faux villa on the island. I guess that's a villa. Waking up on his faux villa on the island, covered in blood, naked, but without a hangover. He jumped with a start and looked out his window, but the beach had no strange curved structure dragged by a black road like a tongue. He wiped blood from his forehead and swore. There was no hangover, but he still had a mess to clean up. Gates went to the intercom, said, "Get this corpse out the master bedroom." and then he ambled to the bathroom and sat heavily on the toilet to process the ritual, its results, and what that meant for him now. In the world between worlds, the dome evaporated into sandy cloud, and the misshapen putrid being made of light called Nordic Jack extracted from the mass, floating high into the chamber, joining its brethren in the energy stream. Below, on the featureless floor, all that remained was a broken excuse for an extraction vehicle, but one of the very old models, the late Baba Yaga Dacha. As the sand cloud reconfigured into its previous incarnation, honeycombed in primary shapes, the being that had been Nordic Jack allowed itself to descend again from the energy beam. His brethren did likewise, flickering in a nauseating way as they followed his descent from the top of the chamber. Simultaneous to their descent, the gridwork of chambers and energy vectors fully reestablished themselves around the broken vessel, and the wide empty chamber was once more filled with infrastructure, a server array of sand units bearing the computational power of man's mightiest designs, and larger than any on Earth. Looking down from the pillar, Ricky's eyes were fixed. His promising discovery had been a path recessed into the massive supporting strut. It wrapped around the entire column, spiraling to the roof of the chamber. He noticed it before the others and crept onto it. He could see other similar paths like it in other columns across the space. From a distance, the paths looked like tight black ribbons wound around a metal leg. Even a knee of some sort seemed to jut to the side. The impression was rather like a great insect that had its spindly legs bowed out, only these legs were actually quite large. It's just that the scale of the surrounding area was much larger. 6 skyscraper-sized legs seemed almost thin. Up close, he found the path seemed perfectly hewn into the pillar, such that it wound at an angle and a constant slope. It was recessed entirely into the struts on 3 sides, and open such that a person could easily fall to their death out the far side if they were not paying attention. There was no rail. One had to lean forward owing to scant headroom. The horizontal rut was about 5 feet across, making it easy for 2 to walk abreast. It seemed too short to be intended for normal people. It must have been made for the little gray creatures that lived on fear. This was not a thought Ricky relished, but staying still was even more loathsome to him at this point. He was afraid, deeply afraid. But this in fact drove him, because the prospect of escaping the subterranean structure for something above was much more attractive than the prospect of remaining where he was. So immediately upon his discovery, he jabbed Cleverhead, and Cleverhead shook his head, then looked at him angrily, gesturing to the dome. However, he soon saw where Ricky was pointing. Cleverhead nudged Carl and Ethan. They were able to look away from the dome more easily. Carl said, "Yes, good job, go, go, go." And the 4 began running up the steep path on that massive bent column. It took a good 10 minutes to reach the top, and as they did, breathing heavily, Ricky couldn't help looking back through the opening to the chamber. Now his eyes were fixed, and his timing was fine. He saw the dome disappear. He saw the beach disappear. He saw a cloud, and beneath the cloud was no gates and no man in white clothes. There was, however, the Baba Yaga Dacha lying on the featureless ground, broken, and there were putrid light configurations floating about the chamber, gradually descending to examine the ship. Seeing them, Ricky began to feel as though his very eyes were influencing them. He began to feel a searching darkness. "Get up here, Ricky!" Carl grabbed him by the coat and yanked him fully through. The opening was circular, and it irised shut behind them, then became featureless floor. Carl stood from helping Ricky, saying, "Have you ever felt like someone was staring at you?" Ed was looking around the new area they had reached. A transparency gave on a very large space that was entirely mirrored. A bubbling river that had an unnatural blue-purple color flowed lazily by right in front of them. Seeming hardly to move, it flowed so slow. They were now in a great spherical cavern that tapered to darkness to the left and the right. Carl felt as though he were some microscopic being inside half a bubble. "Well, there's good news and bad news," he said at last. "What's the good news?" Ethan asked. "There are portals here, if I'm remembering right." Carl had now fished out his map and was looking closely at it. "It's been near 2 hours, maybe 3, since we lose the cat. She may be back any time if she starts to do her rounds. Clever Ed pushed air out his lips. What's the bad news? I don't exactly know where to go from here. I've never been in this particular space more than a handful of seconds. I know we don't want to try the floor. It's a miracle they have not caught us yet. Last time I was here, I didn't even know there was a hatch like that. This place, I don't know what it is. I know there are two nexus points. One is in the transparency ahead of us. One is directly behind us inside the silvered wall. Are there any in the curved ceiling 100 feet above? I don't know, maybe. And we can't go back how we came. Ricky was looking at the floor. Well, you can try, but you're saying it won't work. Ricky finished. Yes. Clever Ed walked out to the transparency and looked up. A deep sound signaled a huge cylinder entering the conch ziggurat. They were right beneath it, but it was still hundreds of feet away, and it flowed into the structure, disappearing around a gentle curve far in the distance within the huge abstraction. Another followed soon after, and then a strange shape with many points, which was hard to get one's mind around somehow. Ed looked down the river. It was a good 15 feet wide, maybe 20. It was quite full and widened as it left the curled opening of the conch. He said, "So that's all hydrogen peroxide, a byproduct of the cylinders and what they do to human beings," Carl confirmed. "So you see the scale of this operation. This transparency must be reflective from the outside. The cylinders didn't even notice you." "Well, that's good at least. As to the river, you want to blow it up, turn it into that elephant toothpaste stuff the middle schoolers are crazy about these days?" Ed looked skeptical. "Ricky said it earlier." Carl looked thoughtful. "The wood fell off the dacha when it was open to the sun. At minimum, a large enough reaction will produce steam and hopefully copious foam, and will block off the light this massive structure faces. That must be part of its energy design, the light going around these mirrors. I do not know how precisely, I don't know precisely what will happen, except that those who operate this edifice would be quite busy for a long time. Now I don't know. Well, let's see how strong these walls are," said Ed, and immediately brought up his weapon. Carl quickly put a hand on the gun and pushed it down. "That's going to get us in trouble. It's loud," he said. Ed blinked at him, then stepped back. "Fair, I didn't think that through. I'm not thinking clear." Carl turned to Ricky. "Ricky, use the sonic gun you got from the spider hole." "Sure." And Ricky walked up to the wall and fired. There was a sound of impact, and it reverberated through the space, but it did not sound like a gunshot. It sounded like a noise a seashell might make, a static noise that got loud and then slowly dissipated. "Fam, you think it's smart to make big noise like that?" Ethan was walking up to the wall. Clever Ed interrupted a bit of sweat on his forehead, looking around. "You know what I think? I think we're in some kind of spaceship, and we're on some weird planet. You heard them, Pleiadians. Well, these guys, probably Orionians, but we've heard about these guys before. Personally, I think it makes a lot more sense that these are some damn aliens than medieval demons. It's not God and the devil, it's Pleiadians and Orionians. And if that's the case, they can't avoid a bullet, and we shouldn't worry so much about being loud. We should worry about finding the head of the snake." "No," said Carl. "The Greys cannot avoid a bullet. The beings you saw made of light, though, they won't even be affected, and they are very like snakeheads. Thankfully, I do not think they are going to bother us where we are. It is like we are in the walls as mice, and one of us just knocked over a nail. Somebody heard, maybe, but there are no beings immediately nearby, and you are wrong, Ed. Remember Mario. Ethan, remember Hideo Kojima. The game designer is not part of the game. The game designer makes the game. The painter makes the painting. Certainly his influence is in every piece of his art, down to the molecular level, but he is not bound by the painting. Orionians, Pleiadians, they would be bound by the rules of the universe. This place is different because it is not our universe. And they certainly do not make this universe. Or we would not be here. There would not be any spiders here. You see what I'm saying, Ed? Do you feel hungry? Do you thirst? Clever Ed didn't like where this was going. Well, no, but I've only been here a few hours. Did you have a big meal before you came? Carl persisted. Ricky fielded that one. We had eggs from the dacha. Thank you for keeping eggs in the fridge. Eggs are good. They sustain you a while, but you should be hungrier than you are. How is it you are not? This world, this world between worlds, this building place, it is not the same as ours. We do not need to eat here at all. We can, but we do not need to. We are nourished from the very air. Ed was feeling his stomach unconsciously. I don't know, I'm pretty hyped up and it's only been a few hours. Carl shook his head. The rules are different here. You are not in your universe. We are not in our universe. We are in a different universe. We are on a different canvas. We are in different software. In a Collateral film franchise. Another novel. You understand? God is outside all his works of art. He is not bound by them. He is no Pleiadian. He is no Orionian. The Orionians call God Pleiadian to justify their own demonic evil. They do not want to be seen as fighting against good. They want to be seen as fighting against some unknown alien force like them but different. The painter is not some collateral alien collective within the tapestry or the simulation or the painting. The painter is beyond the painting. He painted all that is in it, you see? So God cannot be some unknown alien. Ed squinted and retrieved his orange glasses from a pocket in his coat, quickly putting them on and looking out at the hydrogen peroxide river, muttering, "What are you, some kind of conspiracy Yoda?" "That's what I said, no cap." Everybody looked at Ethan briefly, then back out at the river. Ricky broke from the group first and went to the ends of the chamber that were in shadow. After a moment he said, "Well, I don't see any other ways out of here." Carl nodded. "We should figure out where we are. If we can reach cylinders that are not in flight somewhere, maybe we will never need any cat again." "No cap, that would not hurt my feelings," Ethan quipped. "Come now," Carl defended. "Not all cats are bad. Slinky just dislikes you." #mutual.